These are the problems that society has left behind, the most deeply rooted or most intractable. You can't just stand back and read the numbers. You have to feel and know those stories. You have to let your heart break in this work. Before we got married, we decided that these resources that had come from Microsoft would be given, the vast majority, back to the world. We started with education in the United States. We were really troubled by the fact that the US education system leaves 2/3 of the kids behind. 2/3 aren't ready for college. And we also have taken a very disease-oriented focus in global health. Malaria, HIV/AIDS as examples. If you don't start with a healthy start, you can't go on to get a great education and then economic opportunity. I'm often in and out of health clinics, and the moms are just lined up in droves. If you start to interview the moms, how far did they come? You realize the length these parents will go to give their kids vaccines. I see kids and I know they're alive because of these vaccines. The reason so many children weren't vaccinated is there really wasn't a market in these low-income countries. But if we think of it from the pharmaceutical point of view, that they have shareholders that they're beholden to, we can help create and shape markets around vaccines. That business motive will actually help the developing world. There are almost 500 million children today that are vaccinated because of this fund that we started. 7 million children are alive. As I have traveled now for 15 years, talking to women about vaccines for their children, if I stayed long enough, they wanted to talk about contraceptives. And does she hope to have more children?
और बच्चा चाहिए आपको? शायद काफी है. No, she doesn't want more.
It's an emergency. I have 5 children. I can't have another one. Because if they can time and space the births of those children, they know their children are more likely to survive. They can feed them, they can educate them. We are leaving behind 225 million women that want access to contraceptives. We hadn't come out with a new contraceptive for women in the developing world in over 30 years. The predominant tool is a shot that's very difficult to get in your muscle. Well, we've been working on with a number of partners a very small little blister pack. They last 6 months, and she literally just squeezes it into her arm. It's very simple. So you could give her a whole bunch of them to take home. She doesn't have to travel 20 kilometers anymore in the heat. I'd like to talk with you about something that should be a totally uncontroversial topic. I set up to put back on the global health stage in 2012 the idea of funding contraceptives and making sure women were the center of it, let them voluntarily decide if they wanted to have them, but to give them access. For an idea that is so broadly accepted in private, birth control certainly generates a lot of opposition in public. As I was teaching my daughters to use their voice in the world, to be strong women, I thought, I really need to be role modeling that in my work. It's okay to take on things that are controversial. Sometimes doing bold work in the world just means taking on controversial issues. The rains are changing in Africa because of climate change. We have a fantastic new innovation, a seed that is more drought resistant. They get 1/3 more yield off their farm. The agro dealers who get the seeds out, they get them out to men. More than 50% of the farmers in Africa are women. If you don't have your strategies go specifically to women and girls, you will leave them behind. If you want to lift up a family or a community, you got to lift up the woman. Every marginal dollar she has in her hands, she's twice as likely than her husband to pour it back in her family. They make those long-term investments on behalf of their children. We have to look at the problem and say, we have a great new innovation. Are we delivering it to everybody? And if not, how do we get it to the other half? One of the biggest surprises to Bill and me is how little data there was. Very little that was actionable. One of the things I'm trying to do is get more data around women and girls. Where they were born, do they have access to banking services? We can't make good decisions for ourselves, nor can we ask a government to invest without knowing what's working. We'll never move funding for women if we don't precisely know some of the answers to these questions. So we've invested heavily in data systems across the world. Now finally on my desktop, I can get every 6 months, an Excel spreadsheet that shows me country by country how we're doing across a set of statistics. And I know where we are on target to actually make this goal of getting 120 million women voluntary access to contraceptives by 2020, and where we're precisely off. This idea of really using data in philanthropy to measure things, to know what's working, that I think will have had a profound effect on the world. Sometimes it's hard for people to connect with somebody in another country. When you share those stories that touch people's hearts, that's where our humanity connects. It changes your view of the world to be out in these places. It changes your view of what needs to get done. Bill and I both think of the foundation as a learning journey. What did you see? What does that mean? How might we change what we're doing? All those questions are very alive for us as a couple. Are we day in and day out trying to live our values through the foundation? Are we doing our very best? Because all lives have equal value, no matter where they're lived on the planet.